Continuing our look at Europe's debt crisis, let's bring in Thomas Miller, who served as U.S. ambassador to Greece from 2001 to 2004, and he is currently president and CEO of the International Executive Service Corps. He joins us from our Washington studio. Mr. Ambassador, welcome back to Bottom Line. It's a pleasure to have you on.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Mark.
Sir, the debt deal announced in Brussels, it does have three key components: a reduction in Greece's debts, strengthening Europe's banks, and reinforcing the European bailout fund. But as you know, the devil's in the details. Will that plan be enough to address the structural reforms that many European officials say are needed to prevent the debt crisis from pushing the continent and much of the developed world back into recession?
I think this is a very good start, and I think some of your earlier people who were just on said it well. I mean, this is some very good news, but the devil is in the details. The structural reforms in Greece and elsewhere, and I know the focus is now very much on Italy, this is going to take years. This is not something that's going to be done overnight, and you've got to have these structural reforms if you're ever going to really, to seriously attack the problems that led to this debt crisis in the first place.
Private creditors like banks, they're going to be asked to accept 50% losses on the Greek bonds they hold. Will the creditors agree to that much?
Well, again, you got to ask the creditors. The negotiations were done by an individual, a company that represents the major banks. But the banks still have to sign on the bottom, on the dotted line. My sense is there was a lot of discussion. There were a lot of discussions that went into that the banks had among themselves. And my sense is that most of the banks, most of the creditors, if not all, will agree to this.
Well, does today's agreement hurt Greece at all? The Associated Press quotes a prominent left-wing deputy, Demetrios Papadimoulis. He said, "We are now locked in a system of continuous austerity, haphazard privatization, and continuous supervision by our creditors." And even Prime Minister Papandreou said the government is likely going to buy shares in some Greek banks.
Well, again, I think the question that I would ask in Greece is, what were the options? There were no good options, and I would say that this was probably the least bad option. If someone's looking for a deal where they don't have to deal with creditors, then Greece would be off on its own. It would be left to its own devices, and it wouldn't have any outside help. And without outside help, I don't know what the answer would be. This is why they went down this painful path. But I think this is good news for Greece.
Mr. Ambassador, banks in Italy and Spain, they're facing huge capital shortfalls. Will the increased size of the European Financial Stability Fund, the EFSF, will that be enough to lower the borrowing costs for their governments? Because in theory, the stronger bailout fund means Italy and Spain's bonds would be more attractive investments.
Right, and that's what the purpose of coming up with this €1 trillion fund is all about. Early indications from what I've seen, and it's just, today, the day after the deal, is the rates haven't come down significantly, but I think we have to give this some time. This is all about confidence. It's about economics, but at its core, it's really about confidence. And it's the question for investors is, do they have confidence in buying bonds in these countries? And if they do, rates will come down. If they don't, then rates will stay very, very high.
The Greek Prime Minister, Mr. Papandreou, he addressed the nation on state TV just a while ago, and he said that the new financing package for the country provided Greece with the time to reform the economy. When he says the time, how much time is needed? And I say that in facing the specter of the two largest economies, Germany and France, once again having to take the lead to try to pull Greece away from the precipice.
Well, my sense, Mark, is this is going to take a while, and I don't think we're talking about months. I think we're really talking about years. And this kind of herky-jerky, we'll release a little tranche here and a little tranche there every couple of months. You're not going to see the kind of significant reforms over a period of a couple of months. This is going to take a while because the kinds of things that they need to do is to get rid of a lot of the labor rigidities they've had in Greece.
Right.
They need to do serious privatization, and you can't just sell companies. You got to get them in shape to sell. They need to seriously attack the problems of a lot of people on the government payroll, and these are human beings who have mortgages to pay and bills to pay and everything else, and you've got to do this in a way that is humane.
Mr. Ambassador, we have less than a minute left. Yesterday, as you know, there was word that China might contribute to Europe's bailout fund. If Beijing does offer assistance, what does that mean for China's presence on the world stage?
Well, I think China's presence on the world stage is already quite significant. Just before coming on, Mark, I saw a comment by a Chinese official that was quite positive about China offering some assistance, but with a couple of conditions. They want to make sure their investments protected. They want to make sure that, this individual also said, and stop nagging us on our currency. And he had a couple other things to say. So it's not going to be without strings.
The former U.S. Ambassador to Greece, Thomas Miller, now the President and CEO of the International Executive Service Corps, joining us from Washington. Mr. Ambassador, it's always a privilege to have you on. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mark.